That's Tom McCormick. The album is called South Beat. We just heard the title track. As mentioned, Tom McCormick is here in the igloo with me tonight, and he doesn't seem to think it's cold in here at all, but I guess that's maybe because, like so many of us, he ain't from around here. Hi, Tom.
How's it going?
All good. Welcome to the igloo.
Nice to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. Okay, please tell us a little bit about the tune we were just listening to, South Beat.
Okay, that's the title track of my CD, South Beat. You want a little background?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It was named after a club that just happened to be on South Beach.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bit of a play on words there. It was a great club while it lasted, a wonderful place to play. Musicians got treated incredibly well. The guy that owned it kind of favored Latin jazz. I played there with a number of different people, with a band that we had called Saoko. I played there with Mongo Santa Maria and a Brazilian singer named Tonya Elizabeth. And also he would bring a lot of people down from New York, like Tito Puente, Ray Barreto, Nestor Torres played there. I played there with Ira Sullivan. So it was a really wonderful club, and such a wonderful club that I decided to name a tune after it.
And I can understand why you would do a thing like that, with experiences like that, with folks like that you performed with. Your website, of course, lists the fact that you've been part of the South Florida music scene for 25 years and more. Yeah, you've been around for a minute. I was listening to some of those names. And I was also struck, as I was looking at your website, which is, by the way, Tom McCormick Music, all one word, tommccormickmusic.com. There's a link to it on the Real Tracy Fields Facebook page. Have you ever counted up, Tom, the number of, well, I don't even want to say artists, but shall we say ensembles with which you've worked?
No, I actually haven't. I haven't even counted the ones that are on the website. And I'm sure there's some I'm forgetting.
Most likely, and, I can see how that would happen. I was really struck. How many categories of music? Let me see if I can get here and take a look and see how many different categories of music we have you listed as playing with. Well, we got jazz and Latin and pop and big band and symphonic, and that's something else I'm kind of curious about, actually. I always love to see musicians working. I'm not sure I don't know too many working musicians who work in so many genres as you apparently do. What's up with that?
What's up with it? Well, my biggest love is jazz, and that's what I enjoy doing the most. But I love to play symphonic. I worked for a long time with the Miami Symphony. They even listed me on their webpage as their saxophonist. But actually, a saxophonist in the symphony, they don't use you on every concert. Only when the music requires saxophone. Mm-hmm. But I did a number of really nice concerts with them. And for me, symphonic musicians are just incredible musicians, and just to be surrounded by all those great musicians was a wonderful experience. Plus all the strings. I mean, when does a jazz musician get to play with strings?
I started to say either too often or not nearly often enough, depending on whom you ask.
Not enough. Oh, not enough.
I would go with the latter as well.
And I enjoy playing different genres. It influences me as a jazz musician. The things I've done, playing pop music, playing Latin music, because the CD, South Beat, most of it is a Latin jazz CD.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say about more than half.
Yeah, I danced to that.
That was the original conception of the CD.
And I'm looking at your website here. I was struck by this quote of yours, which I quite love. Jazz is a team sport. It is the real-time live interplay between players that creates the real magic. So I'm thinking about the way jazz cats work as opposed to the way symphonic cats work. Those are two completely different ways of approaching music, but jazz is your favorite.
Absolutely. The freedom in jazz, there's nothing like it. Yeah, I guess that quote doesn't apply too much to symphonic. Maybe classical musicians would argue. Well, it's definitely, you play live, you have the conductor, you're going to play different depending on how you feel, but still, it's not, they're sticking more to the page, and there's not that much interaction. Maybe you hear somebody else having a great night and it can inspire you to play better in a symphonic setting, but it's not exactly quite the same.
I guess I started to say, more of a hive mind when you're doing symphonic work, although I'm thinking that there's a certain mental connection and emotional connection that goes on amongst jazz cats on the stand as well.
Oh, yeah. I think that's when the real, like in the quote, that's when the real magic happens. Yeah. When you play off each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the beginning, shall we? And the beginning is someplace in Baltimore, Maryland, a town famous for its white front steps, among other things.
I was just there.
It's still there. Good. Okay, I feel secure. You still got people there, or you just went back to the old home place?
A lot of people and a lot of traffic. Kind of reminded me of South Florida.
Yeah, good. It's always good to feel at home, especially when you're at home or in a place that was once home. How did young Tom McCormick get into music originally?
Wow. Well, I feel fortunate that when I was in elementary school, that they had a strong band program in that particular school up there in Baltimore County, Maryland, that actually had a band program, and I was able to start clarinet in 4th grade. I think arts education is very, very, very important. So I was able to get it started at age 9 playing the clarinet. 2 years later, I switched to the tenor saxophone and haven't stopped since.
So what was it? Just the idea that you could join the band that inspired you to pursue it?
Well, I was always interested in music, and when I was 5 or 6, we would visit my grandparents, and there was a piano there, and I would always tinkle and try to figure out, Happy Birthday or whatever, Mary Had a Little Lamb, I don't know, whatever I could find the keys to, and I kind of was drawn to that and just music in general. And when I started playing an instrument, I found my niche. It was something I could do. I wasn't that good at sports, so it was music for me.
Makes perfect sense to me. When did you realize that this was going to be your life's work?
Ooh, great question. As I got through what we then called junior high school and then high school, I guess I got more and more proficient. I had an uncle and aunt that performed together as a duo. And when I was like 12 years old, I would be at these nightclubs sitting in with them. And, the patrons, they couldn't buy me drinks, so they would line up I'd have like a 10 Cokes lined up that the patrons had bought me because they wanted to buy me a drink. And I guess I liked the attention, was maybe part of it. Mm-hmm. And we started a band around that time when I was about 13 years old. Our first gig was playing for Watermelon, actually. And that band stayed together all through high school and eventually graduated to like teen centers and things like that. And then when I was like 15, we were already playing in nightclubs up there. But we were doing pop music.
Who was in this band with
you?
Oh,
it was guys that I played in the music program with. And some of them beginning in elementary school. We were a horn band. Mm-hmm. So we were an 8-piece band, and we would do Chicago and Blood, Sweat, and Tears and stuff like that. And we were about the only band in the area that was doing that. At that time you had the psychedelic bands and the guitar-oriented bands. So we were a band that had like 2 trumpets and a saxophone.
So, as you said, you were playing pop music then. Your work is still quite varied now. Do you remember what it was that drew you to jazz?
I would hear jazz on the radio every now and then, and anything that involved the saxophone, attracted me. And it sounded kind of complex to my ears, but I was really drawn to it. It was, what are they doing, and how do you do that? And my parents were able to put me in some private lessons, a half an hour a week at a local music store. And the first teacher, he was like a show guy. He had come back from Vegas. He helped me a lot with technique and sound and stuff like that. And then I went to the second teacher, and he laid a stack of records on me, albums back, the long plays. And I remember every record that he gave me to this day. And he asked me what I was into, and I was into some of the big bands. And I knew about Dave Brubeck and Jerry Mulligan, but I didn't know much else. And he said, your tastes are going to change. And he gave me these records.
What did he give you?
Well, he gave me John Coltrane Giant Steps. He gave me a Sonny Stitt record called Tune Up. He gave me Chick Corea Light as a Feather and a Herbie Hancock record called, I think it's called Fat Albert Rotunda. And I practically wore the grooves out of Giant Steps, that one particular cut.
Imagine that. Okay.
Yeah. So that definitely had a huge impression. And all those records, Sonny Stitt, I was a huge fan for a long time. I still am. I come back to him. Mm-hmm. I get away from Coltrane, and then I come back with fresh ears, and it's like, wow, there's just so much there to appreciate and be inspired by.
Endless amounts. Well, for me, certainly, and I don't even play, except other people's music. Time now, 15 minutes before 11 o'clock. This is Evening Jazz, Miami Mondays and Beyond. Tom McCormick is in the igloo with me tonight. We are talking about his life and his work and his latest album, his big release, South Beat. Tom, I think it's time we picked another tune. What do you think we should share with our friends now?
Okay, I'm going to make you choose, but it's either going to be Mantra or My Foolish Heart.
Well, let's see. I guess it's probably a good time for a ballad. While I get this ready to go, while I cue this up, will you please tell our friends how you chose to put My Foolish Heart on this album?
Oh, okay. There's nothing like a nice tenor saxophone ballad. And when I was at the University of Miami playing in the concert jazz band, my very first year there, this was my feature. There was a very nice John Fedcock arrangement of My Foolish Heart. And we went to the IAJE convention, and I got to play it there. And so I kind of fell in love with the tune there. For the record, I didn't do too much different with it. Tweaked the chords a little bit, reharmonized it just a tiny bit, and just basically played it. You'll hear from Eric England on the acoustic bass with a solo there.
Nice. Tom McCormick is here. We're listening to tracks from his album South Beat. And of course, that was My Foolish Heart. Yeah, it is a nice album, Tom. Tell us about the folks who made it with you.
Okay, it's kind of two rhythm sections on there, although the piano player's the same on actually all 10 tracks, and that's Pete Wallace, great piano player. He was an undergrad when I was a grad student at UM, and he actually played in one of my student ensembles when I was teaching there.
Cool.
So I've kind of just watched him blossom through the years.
It's always good to have a good relationship with your professors. So we've got Pete on piano. Who else is here?
Okay, a couple of young lions you've probably heard of. Eric England, primarily on the upright bass, and David Chiverton on the drums. Mm-hmm. They're one rhythm section. And then on half of the record, I have Nicky Orta on bass, electric bass, and Carlo Magno Araya on drums, who unfortunately moved away. He's back in Costa Rica. He got a teaching position there, which is good for him.
Yeah.
He got his doctorate, and, a couple of months later, he was out of here. Everything fell into place for him. But I think he's going to be back a lot, and he's going to be setting up his recording studio over there, and we're going to be hearing great things from him.
I hope so. I'm sitting here waiting. I was surprised. I forget who it was. I think it might have been Dr. Jamie Owsley, who told me that Carlo had gone back south. I was like, but wait, you're South Florida's busiest producer, among other things.
He's busy.
Yeah, he is. He is. So, okay, two rhythm sections. And let's see, there's some other folks on this album as well.
We got a horn section.
Mm-hmm.
So the horn section was Doug Michaels and John Cricker. Doug Michaels on trumpet, John Cricker on trombone. Awesome players I played countless gigs with. we had John Lovell come in as trumpet soloist. Another person I go way back with. Awesome jazz player. We have a couple guitarists on a couple tracks. We have Jonathan Kreisberg for one.
And Leo Quintero.
Yes, thank you.
It's all right. I've got the notes here. So
yeah.
I'm a little bit ahead of you in that respect.
I would have remembered.
I believe you.
I think I would have. But thanks for the prompt. So Jonathan Kreisberg is another one. He was an undergrad when I was at UM. Just an amazing guitarist who's doing really well up there in New York and comes down here every now and then and plays. Sometimes tours with Dr. Lonnie Smith. And Leo is a guy that has a studio and has played on countless records, and he's involved in education with Berklee School of Music. He goes to South America. Just an awesome guitar player.
I always love.
And I'm sorry.
But wait, there's more. Go ahead.
Well, wait, I'm sorry. Edwin Bonilla on percussion.
Yes.
Yes, can't forget Edwin.
No.
He really added a lot to those cuts he played on.
But wait, there's still one more. Humberto Ibarra.
Can't forget the Guiro player.
So yeah, quite a cast of characters here making Tom McCormick's album South Beat happen. Tom, you mentioned that a lot of these folks were people that you taught or worked with when you were in school. In addition to your working in so many different kinds of music, you do a lot of teaching. And did you think when you were busy deciding to become a professional musician, did you plan to become a musical educator, or did you just kind of back into it?
That's a great question. For me, they kind of go hand in hand, but the teaching and the playing, I mean, they reinforce each other. I think my experience as a working musician helps me as a teacher. I'm not just an academic. Mm-hmm. But when I was an undergrad way back at a school, it's now called Towson University up there in Baltimore, I saw what my saxophone professor did, and I thought this would be a really great way to make a living, teaching at the college level, working with adults, and kind of always had that in the back of my mind. It's gotten to the point where you really need at least a master's degree even to teach adjunct these days.
Yeah.
And I had heard about this program at the University of Miami where you could be a graduate assistant, or sometimes they call them teaching assistants, where they give you a scholarship and you study and you also teach, and they actually pay you for that. And when I was able to get that, it was like an offer I couldn't refuse. It was like a dream come true. I always wanted to go to a, kind of real jazz school. I felt that maybe I was lacking something. You know, when I got out of high school, the real jazz schools were Berklee, University of Miami, and North Texas. Mm-hmm. And finally had the opportunity to go there, and it was just a great experience. I learned so much. I learned so much from the professors. I learned from the students, and it was a blast, really.
As teaching so often is. What is the most important thing that you learned at UM as you prepared to become a jazz educator?
Oh, well, you got a couple hours?
Well, actually, there's another part of that question as well. You know, the rest of the question has to do with what's the most important thing you teach your students. So talk to me about your philosophy of music education.
Well, I have to give credit to Vince Maggio for a lot of the things that I teach. Even that quote up there on my website about interaction among players on mm-hmm. stage, that's very much a Vince Maggio concept. But there's all kinds of great teachers over there that I was able to study with. I wrote my first tune when I was there, actually for a class. It happens to be called Mantra. It's on the CD.
I was about to say, it's here. I think we're going to listen to that next.
But, that would be awesome.
All right. I want you, please, if you would, Joe, just to talk a little, and I know your name's not Joe. You know,
They're excused.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate your patience with me tonight. As I said, I'm really not functioning at top level.
I'm sorry to hear you're a little bit under the weather.
You're doing an excellent job of taking up my slack, and I'm deeply grateful for that. But I was going to say something along the lines of I'm really curious about how education has, you say that education and your playing career kind of reinforce each other. And I'm curious about what you get from one to bring to the other and vice versa. And while you answer that, I'm going to see if I can get mantra ready to go.
Okay. Well, I think the situation for young musicians, their opportunities have definitely changed a lot. But when I was the age of most of my students at Miami-Dade College, I was already playing gigs. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure they have as many opportunities. But, I think part of our job is to prepare them for that. And often I'm able to actually recommend them for gigs. I have a former student that's on a cruise ship now, and he's having a time of his life, and he's got a girlfriend on there, and they love him. And that's a great job for a young person, mm-hmm. Not for somebody when you get a few commitments in life and things like that. But yeah. I did it when I was younger mm-hmm. for a while. Just to be able to tell musicians like young students what the playing music is really all about, because they need to hear that.
What is playing music really all about?
Well, you have to have some business sense, and you have to treat it like a business. I think the danger for student musicians is maybe they're a high school star, and then maybe they get into a great school, and I've seen some musicians that really they don't quite develop socially, and they spend so much time in the practice room, and then they get out and the reality hits them in the face like a brick wall, and they expect people to come to them, and it's not really like that. There's a great professor that was at UM named Ron Miller. He was the teacher that inspired me to write mantra. And the first class I had with him, jazz composition, he said, you got to get out in the world. You should be informed, you should be well read, you should travel, and this is all going to make you a better musician and a better composer. You can't spend all your time in the practice room. And at UM, they made all the undergrads take a music business course. I thought that was a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
Now, they all did not want to be there. They let me take some undergrad courses once mm-hmm. I started working on the doctorate. And I'm sitting in there as a much older grad student, and I was getting a lot out of it, but they just saw it as something to keep them from practicing. But there was a lot of great information. If they ever want to do their own CD, they need to know something about royalties and something about the business. And just to get gigs, they needed that information.
So music education, in addition to things besides just music, there's a lot going on that folks need to know. So
yeah, I think young musicians coming up today need to know the technology. And so many musicians now have their own studio. I'm a little behind in that regard, but I'll get there someday.
It's getting easier and easier to do. I think that
absolutely.
Have we reached the point now where you can do almost everything with your phone?
With your phone? I don't know if you can record a whole CD with your phone, but maybe somebody's doing it. I don't know.
They've made movies, but I guess that's another conversation.
Have they?
Yeah, they have.
Wow.
The future, it's a heck of a place.
Yeah, but with a good computer and a program like Pro Tools and some good mics and preamps, you got yourself a home setup. And what a lot of musicians do is people send them projects and they put their track on, in the comfort of their home. Some guys are recording in a closet converted into a little space.
Yeah. And that's just one of the changes in music. You know, I think a lot when I talk to folks who come up and visit here in the Igloo, and it was one of the things I was thinking about asking you about, the difference in music education now and then. You know, it used to be that young musicians learned a lot on the stand, and these days,
Oh, yeah.
as I think you alluded to a few minutes ago, people get much more education in the classroom.
Well, yeah. But there's no substitute for on-the-stand education.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always encouraging my students to hit the jam sessions, check out the local scene, support jazz, because you're going to want people to support you someday.
How about
It's not
that?
all academic, and it's not all classroom. And hats off to the ones that are doing it. A lot of even the high school kids, like at the New World, you know, they show up at places like the Fish House and different places. And like at the Fish House, they can get a chance to get up there and play.
Which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's another former student running that. Another former student of mine, David Leone. He's doing really good.
He was here a couple of weeks ago.
Awesome.
And I want to thank you, Professor McCormick, for the students you've unleashed on us and the work that they're giving.
Thank you.
Let's take a minute. Oh, I have to say this right now. It's 4 minutes past 11. This is WLRN and HD1 Miami, Fort Lauderdale, WKWM and HD1 Marathon, Key West. This is Evening Jazz, Miami Mondays and Beyond. Tom McCormick is here with me. We're talking about life and work and his latest recording. More on that in a little while. The album's called South Beat, and we're going to listen now to Tom's very first composition, Mantra. Anything you want to say about it before we play it?
The title has no special significance.
But it
was
does
kind
look
of
good.
like, yeah, the tune just seemed kind of spiritual to me, and I wanted to come up with a spiritual title. I mean, there's times when I've actually thumbed through a dictionary to come. I probably did it in that case. Definitely in the case of iridescence. Yeah, this is cool. Iridescence. I think I'll call the tune that.
That's nice. I like that. All right, here it is, Mantra, fresh out of the dictionary from Tom McCormick. Write a song, basically, is how that one came to be, right?
Well, yeah, you could say that. It was for a class
That would do it.
at UM. Jazz composition.
But apparently you came to like writing songs, and how did that happen?
I think writing is very important for an artist, a musician. That way you can really have your own voice.
Mm-hmm.
And there's plenty of CDs out there of standards, although there's nothing wrong with putting out a CD of standards. I love standards. But I think you can create your own thing when you write your own compositions. It's there's nothing like it. Yeah, that's basically it. Creating your own voice. Really, improv and composing are the same thing. Really, one is of the moment, improvisation.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one, if you wake up the next day and you don't like what you wrote before, you can fix it and change it. But for me, the goal of improvisation is spontaneous composition. So you should be employing the same techniques when you improvise that you would do when you're composing. And I think a player that's the perfect example of that is Wayne Shorter. On some of those Weather Report records, I can't tell if what he's playing is pre-composed or if he just made that up at the recording session. I think it's a little bit of both.
That's what genius sounds like.
Absolutely. It doesn't have to be a zillion notes either. And Wayne Shorter is, again, he's the perfect example of that. Sometimes I think it's harder to play a really great solo using less notes than always with zillions of notes.
Yeah, a choice as opposed to dazzling them with, I started to say, with a word that you can't actually say on public radio. So. Brilliance as opposed to that other stuff.
Oh, I think I know what you were going to say.
Yeah, I guess you probably do. 11:13, I'm talking with Tom McCormick, and we're talking about his album South Beat. So, Tom, this is actually your first recording as a leader?
Yes.
Why this album? Why now?
Oh, it's been a really long time coming. What pushed it along further was my good friend and musical collaborator, Pete Wallace, did his CD about 3 or 4 years ago.
Yep, featured it here on Evening Jazz.
That's right. I remember that. I got the email from him about that, and I listened in too. Some of the same players: Eric England, David Chiverton, played and John Lovell played on that CD, and I thought, here's a great band. I should start thinking about doing my own CD, but it just other things came up, and it just got pushed aside here and there. I get real busy in what they call the season here. So between teaching in the daytime and playing gigs at night, doing in what we call the season here, which is the winter, doing a lot of shows and things like that. Sometimes they're like Broadway shows, but a lot of times they're acts that come into town, and they need a band and they need good readers, and I do that kind of thing too. So I get busy, and I kept thinking, as soon as this season's over, I'm going to be able to start working on that record. And 2 years ago, we started rehearsing, and a year ago, we went in the studio. And, in the past few months, that's when I was able to get it out. July 1st was the actual day that I got the CDs back.
So that delay, I'm thinking about this whole process of everything happening in its time. How do you feel that the music, and perhaps you as a player and perhaps as a composer and your bandmates, how do you think that the amount of time that it took for this project to come together affected it?
Well, I had a lot of time to think about things like song order and song selection.
These are important things, yeah.
Yeah. I think it all worked out for the best. The order of the songs and the mix of styles. I'm overjoyed with the reception it's been getting, and some reviews I've gotten, and it's been getting some great airplay. So
yeah, we like
couldn't
it here.
ask for anything more.
We like it here on Evening Jazz. But in addition to airplay, of course, there's live performance. I know that you did your CD release party at the Open Stage Club a few weeks back.
Oh, yeah.
And there was this other gig that was supposed to happen in D.C., and there's a story related to that.
Uh-oh.
Will you tell us about it, please?
Well, I came back from the Baltimore, Washington area, and I was scheduled to perform with Nicole Henry at Blues Alley. That would have been Thursday night. But after I got up there, I found out that they had some sort of an emergency. It may have involved the water heater. Some of the local musicians up there said that they heard that Blues Alley had a fire. So they actually canceled whoever was supposed to play Wednesday night, and they canceled us on Thursday night. But they're supposed to reschedule.
Okay,
so
I'm
hoping
forward to.
Hoping to go up there again to my old stomping grounds. I played there a long time ago with some different people. It's one of my favorite clubs anywhere. It's got a lot of history. It's a great club.
I saw Dexter Gordon there
many
moons ago. Yes.
I saw, who did I see? Dizzy Gillespie, for one. Woody Shaw. I saw one of my favorite saxophonists, Jan Garbarek, or Gabarek, depending on how you pronounce it.
I can spell it. I've never really needed to say it much. Yeah. So Blues Alley is on the horizon for you. What else you got coming up? Anything in particular you want to tell us about, or?
I play with a big band, a number of big bands, but one pretty regularly. That's called the Miami Big Sound Orchestra. My good friend Pete Francis runs that one. Mm-hmm. And another guy that I went to UM with. It's one of the great things about going to a school like that is the connections you make. Lifelong connections. And anyway, we got something coming up this week that I almost forgot about. I got to check my calendar here to make sure I tell you the right date. I believe it's Friday.
I think you're right. I think I posted something about that on the Real Tracy Fields Facebook page, but you'll find the details before I will.
Maybe.
The Miami Big
so.
Sound Orchestra.
I believe that Pete said it was something called Viernes Culturales.
That's right, Cultural Fridays. Got it right here on your website. Viernes Culturales, Cultural Fridays in Little Havana, the Miami Big Sound Orchestra at Domino Plaza, 8th Street and Southwest 15th Avenue. Showtime, 7 o'clock, and that's happening this Friday, the 28th of October.
And it's 100% free of charge, outdoor concert. And that's something I'm very happy to be involved with. That's a great band. They're doing some different material. They kind of favor Latin jazz. There's not too many places where you can hear a big band doing Latin jazz these days. And they tend to feature me a lot.
Which is always a good thing. And maybe that answers the question I was about to ask you. Why Miami?
How did I get here?
I think I'm clear on how you got here. You came because you wanted to go to UM, right? And you
No,
had
a
the
lot of
opportunity?
people think I came for UM. No,
I'm
actually,
wrong.
that
Okay.
came a little bit later. I knew UM was a great school. I took a cruise ship gig
Okay.
in 1983, and I told all my friends and musical buddies and fellow musicians, I'll be back in 2 months. And then actually, I never came back to live permanently in Baltimore.
Sand in
It
your
led me
shoes.
to Miami, and then I settled here.
Sand in your shoes.
Right?
That's the technical explanation, but what is it that has allowed you to stay here and grow and work as a musician? People are constantly telling me what a challenging environment this is for music and musicians, and, somehow or another we all keep going, but...
Yes. I agree with you. It can be challenging. But I think it's challenging anywhere. I mean, it's challenging in New York. New York is great. There's, a lot of clubs there. A lot of tours originate there. A lot of great players. But a lot of competition, too. Miami has great musicians. I think a big part of that is the University of Miami. So many students come and they stay. So I think we have a very strong scene here. Great musicians. Sometimes it seems like there's not enough gigs, of course,
Yeah.
for people to work, but people find their niche. There's a very vibrant recording scene here. We got one of the greatest studios with an incredible history at Criteria, which is called the Hit Factory Criteria now. You just walk in there and look at all the gold records on the wall and all the great music that's been made there and continues to be made there in every genre.
In an
including
unassuming
jazz.
building in North Miami. Yeah.
Right. There's that whole area. They play it up as the arts district of North Miami, and there's actually a number of great studios centered all around there.
So in some respects, South Florida is indeed the center of the universe.
Yeah, I think it's the center of the Latin music universe.
And I'm a little partial, so I would say that anyway. My guest tonight is Tom McCormick. We've been talking about his album South Beat, about his life and his work as a musician, as an educator. And Tom, is there anything I haven't asked you about that you want to tell my friends as we come down to the close of our time together?
Wow. I think we've covered a lot of ground. It's really been a pleasure. I want to thank you for what you've done for the jazz community. I've been listening to you for years.
I appreciate that.
In your promotion of great music, and especially your promotion of local artists.
Without y'all, I got nothing. So thank you for your support. One last track. What shall we share last, Tom?
Let's get funky.
Okay.
Feel the Spirit. I can talk about that one a little bit.
Go right ahead while I cue it up.
Okay. This was inspired by the Crusaders. A great group that had great commercial success, but still stayed true to their jazz roots, awesome musicians, and their sound was that trombone, tenor, saxophone combination. Now, that was the original idea for this, but a trombonist friend of mine said, no, you need to use flugelhorn in the low range and and tenor saxophone, which sounds like a trombone and tenor saxophone. So that's actually what I ended up doing, and it came out. I'm real happy with it. We have a great guitar solo by Leo Quintera on there, and a great piano solo by Pete Wallace, and a great bass solo by Eric England.
And some fabulous saxophone work by Tom McCormick. Tom's been my guest here this evening on Evening Jazz, Miami Mondays and Beyond. We're about to hear Feel the Spirit from his album, his first as a leader, Southbeat. Tom, thank you so much for dropping by.
It's been great. Thank you for having me.
Looking forward to seeing you again.
I hope so.